It's pretty hard. It's real competitive. There's so many of us doing the same thing. Not like it was a few years ago. A few years ago, there was big demand for wood. There was a lot of contractors and everybody worked steady. Now we all scrabble for what the few jobs, few contracts there is left in the bush.
Mile after mile of fence posts line our prairie provinces. Few people stop to think of where they come from or what kind of industry they have created. In northern Saskatchewan, the fence post industry has become a way of life. Logging contractors who once prospered in the boom of the 70s have resorted to cutting fence posts as a means of survival. In this week's show, we will take you to northern Saskatchewan and see fence posts in the making. Please join us after this message.
Well, started out, I guess there wasn't a heck of a lot else to do. Back when we were kids, we were poor and there was with no education. Dad, the only thing he could do was cut fence posts other than work on farms and do the trapping he did. And I just started from there. We didn't make much, but it was a living. And from there I left, and I couldn't make much money. As I left, I went to BC, and I spent 8 years there. Then I came back when the pulp mill was built, and I wound up as a pulp cutter for many years. And then eventually, when the sawmills were built in the north, the government were on contractors for them. And I seen an opportunity there, and I rented my first skidder, and I started from there. That was back in 1976. And was no stopping since. I've been doing it all as a contractor all the time.
Is there any business in long logging today?
Well, very little. I don't think in the last 3-4 years I did more than 2 months of winter work. And usually logging is done in the winter. One time when I first started my business about 10 years ago, I used to work in the summer and winter both, for chisel mills and sawmills.
How does it feel as a contractor where you were working the big logs and making bigger money, having to come back to cutting fence posts?
Well, none of us like it, not just myself. It's my men. I've had pretty well the same men for quite a few years, and they didn't like it at all. But when there is no other work to do, and you got a family to feed and payments to make, you do what has to be done, because there is nothing else. So we may do, and we got used to it. Now we do it quite steady every summer.
How many men do you usually employ?
Well, in the peak season, when the fence posts are demanded, I'll have as many as 16, whatever I could haul out in a day. It depends. Sometimes I get men, they come and go sometimes, but I'll have as many as 16, basically 8 steady ones all the time when I'm cutting fence posts. It takes a nice straight jack pine, no cat faces, no red rot, to make a different size of fence posts.
What size are they usually?
Well, usually the size we take is 6 inches breast height and up to 3.5 inch, 3-inch top. And mind you, the different size of fence posts. There's a large one, there's a 7 foot and 8 foot, like ones I'm sitting on here, which are 7s and 8s. That's the larger ones. These are in diameter around 6-8 inches. And these are the small ones, basically the kind that most of the treating plants want. That's a 3 to 5 inch diameter size.
How much does a guy get paid for cutting these?
Well, each contractor pays what he wants to pay. Like myself, I pay half of what I get from the treating plants. That's approximately 24 cents, 25 cents I pay for each one, piled in like this. Well, these are 6-foot fence posts. After the guys put them in a skidway here, they drop them off here so it'll be loaded on a truck. I come in and I count them. I count them all, and then I mark on the pile how many there is, and also in my book. And when they're loaded on a truck, we know how many there is, and then when they're delivered, they peel them, and then whatever calls doesn't make it, we throw away, and then I get paid for whatever ones that they accept. And in return, I come back and I pay my men so much for each one of these fence posts. I get a contract from the treating plant, like in Prince Albert. He gives me a contract for so many thousands of fence posts, and I deliver them rough like this by semi, delivered to the treating plant, Prince Albert. Then he peels them, sharpens them, and treats them, bundles them, grades them, and he sells them to truckers or whoever whoever wants them.
Tell me a bit about the clear-cut area in the back here. You were saying you were doing some work there last year or something?
Yes, we logged this out last year for fence posts and pulp, and we took out approximately 300,000 fence posts back out here and about 1,500 cords of pulp. And this year it was all done, and the Forestry come in and big machinery, and they call it scarifying. They drag big chains behind a large skidder, and it smashes all the brush, and it's kind of more or less, I think it pulls the pine cones off and puts them on the ground so they reseed itself. Probably come back here in about 2 or 3 years' time, you'll see jack pine growing all over. Since Weyerhaeuser took over, it's pretty well went all mechanical, and there is no more hardly any pulp cutting left, but the way we used to do it. And the sawmills don't operate too much around here. So there's only the fence post industry that's really seems to go every year steady and employs a lot of people and keeps us employed. I think myself, my outfit wasn't paid for. I wouldn't be in business either. I'd be broke because it's impossible to make payments on equipment and for the money we earn now. And there is hardly any work left to do.
So how would a man with a family survive in this business?
Well, he couldn't survive not working here. He'd have to be subsidized by the welfare department or unemployment insurance or something, because you can't earn enough here to support a family and pay rent in Orange for the amount of money you can earn here, no matter how hard you work.
A lot of the smaller contractors are going bankrupt, going out of business. So you just say it's just not worth the hassle anymore. What are your plans?
Well, we should know in the next couple of years for sure. A lot of us are being squeezed out. There's just not enough work for us, and there's too many of us, like I said, and we have to work for less and less, and pretty soon we're just a matter of time before we starve out completely, and we can't live. There's just not enough work, and warehouses going mechanical, and it seems like their big contractors are buying out the small guys that's in business now, and eventually there will be just a few big operators left. The way things have been going this last 2 years, I know what I'm going to do. If Meadow Lake Pulp Mill don't hire me when they build a pulp mill, which they said they would, if they don't, I guess I got no choice but move to Alberta, where they're building pulp mills, or else sell out and go work for somebody else. Even selling out isn't possible. Nobody wants to buy this outfit. It's not worth anything. You know, there's just no demand for machinery.
Can you make a living at this sort of work?
Yeah, it's a living, and that's about it. I make enough to get by on. And as of the bush, it's temporary. Like my father, for instance, he gets a contract. We got work for a while, and the contract's finished. Unemployment. So it's not really a steady full-time job unless, of course, you got a steady contract with somebody all year round.
How is it for you? Like, how were you managing through the winter? Was it pretty rough?
Oh, you're no kidding. It's cold.
Yeah.
To keep warm, you got to work like a dog. So, I ran skidder one winter in 40 below weather, and it's pretty cold. As long as you keep moving, it's okay. But it's rough work, all right. It's cold.
Do you think there's a life in this for anybody now working in the bush?
No. There's not much harvesting. It's pretty well all done in this area now. So that's why we're cutting fence posts, because there's hardly any big trees to salvage in this area anyway.
What kind of a policy in government do you think would take the change up here? Is it because there is no trees left for logging, or what?
No, there's a lot of trees, but it's just, I guess, there's just not enough demand for it. There is demand, like for fence posts, but there's too many of us doing that too now. For the ordinary working man with a chainsaw, there is absolutely nothing to do except cut fence posts. And it gets to a point where there's too many of us doing that, and it's flooding the market.
How hard is it for you to get a timber lease?
Oh, it's impossible. I can't get one. And all this country is owned by Weyerhaeuser, and the only people that get it, you have to have a treating plant or a sawmill or something, and then you might get a little timber. And then when you do get timber, you got to sell the product to Weyerhaeuser, like the pulpwood that doesn't make your saw logs or what, and that's pretty hard to do. Weyerhaeuser just don't buy pulp from just anybody. I think Weyerhaeuser should cut down to big contractors and take more wood from us guys that cut fence posts and saw logs, so we can supply more timber and be able to work steadier. That is our biggest trouble right now on this fence post, is trying to get rid of the pulpwood. We sometimes hit a stand of bush and we get too much pulp, and warehouses just limited us the amount we can bring in.
What other kind of work is there for a man in the north?
There is nothing. If any mines hire you up north, they don't seem to hire many native people. And warehouses don't hire anybody from the north. Very few. There is nothing to do except cut fence posts.
They call this a poor man's industry. Do you think that's a good name for it?
It is, because you don't get ahead here. You just hold on. Hold what you got and make a living. There's no big fancy kitchens or steaks for dinner in this camp.
The truck usually comes in, and then it takes him about maybe half an hour, 3/4 of an hour to unload them. And then it goes from there, it goes right into the peeler. And then they peel it and dome it, sharpen it. And then it's brought from over there over onto this side over here, where I do all the treating. And we load up 8 bundles on the ramp here at a time. It's only a 50-foot cylinder, so we can only go 48 feet. And so that way it's all put on there, and then we shove it through into the cylinder, and then that's where we do all the treating inside. And so it's treated in there. It's treated at 120 pounds of pressure with penta and pole treating oil. And it takes roughly around 3.5 hours to treat a batch. So it's pretty slow actually at times, and then at other times it goes good. We leave our wood dry for quite a while before it's treated, so that it dries out, and then it's easier to treat. It takes the treat better, and it just seems like everything goes a lot easier with it too. We've been treating now for I think it was in 83 we started pressure treating. 82 or 83 we started pressure treating.
What was the old way you did it, and why did
It
you
used to be a dip plant here. We had a big dip plant. And you just dipped them into the tank, and then that way it was dipped in there. It was held for about 15 minutes, and then was lifted out. Then it drip dried, and that way, well, it was supposed to be treated, but that was just a dip treat.
Why did you change to pressure treating? Was it the demand?
The demand was a lot better, and for it, and there just wasn't that much of a demand for dip posts that much more, because it was getting so that they weren't lasting as good, and there was quite a few pressure treating outfits in the area, so this way everybody was pretty well going pressure treated.
Where do your posts come from, Olaf?
They come from as far as Buffalo Narrows, and then there's a lot of them out here on past Candle Lake, up in that way. There's quite a few. There's a lot comes from up around L'Orange that way too. So there's quite an area where they come from.
Oh, we started about 17 years ago. We bought a truck from my brother, and we started cutting through contracting for different contractors with different wood preserving. And then from there we decided a few years down the line, we figured we'd start our own. And we started roughly about 12 years ago. We started treating posts, and then we eventually got bigger, and the market is getting better, and we decided that we'd go pressure treating, and then Well, 6 years ago now, we started building, and we went pressure from there. And it seems like it got better and better, so.
I guess market is the big thing. Where is your market for these posts?
A lot of our market is in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, Manitoba. Some in Ontario, but very little. But right now, our biggest market is Alberta and the three prairie provinces. What we usually do, we sell it to individual truckers. We've got approximately 17 trucks hauling out of here, hauling south. We sell them to them, and then they go out and sell it to farmers or lumber yards or wherever they're needed. We've started, about 4 years ago, I think we done about 600,000. Now we're up to, every year it kept going up. Right now, I think this year we'll hit 1 million posts. We got 10 contractors, so you've got 100 people working in the bush, and plus you're looking at roughly 140 in this plant alone, plus the other ones. So you're probably looking at, 350 people that are employed, maybe better, in the post business.
Do you employ mostly native people?
We're a media ourselves, so we kind of work together, and most of the people up north, they're native, so, we get, it's not saying we get all kinds of contractors. We're not just saying we take media, but I'd say 80% of them people from the north are native, so we hire them, I'd say. That's who delivers most of our posts.
Why do you think there's a lot of native people in this business?
Well, I think it's something that it's a lot easier to get into. You don't need all that equipment, like you're saying, and a lot of people are, and it's closer to home for them, eh? So naturally, it gives them some work. That's one thing you got to look at.
Well, I guess the post industry has been alive and well in the northern part of the province for quite a number of years. I think it's unfortunate in that there are not enough posts for everyone when everyone wants, or enough material for everyone when they want material. And in terms, as I mentioned, in good times, everyone wants lots. And the forest is a finite resource. And I think if people want to build up more and get efficiencies of scale, in some cases they can't do that because the forest is not limitless. There's a limit to it. Although there are areas where posts are available, for instance, that Weyerhaeuser does not have exclusive rights to. And any operator can go up there and operate for posts. We have to give Weyerhaeuser the right of first refusal on that material. But generally, they give it within a few days, and we haven't had one request turned down. These reserve areas are laid aside for possible future use of Weyerhaeuser. But in the meantime, people can get in and take posts and operate. There is no Minister of Forestry, you're right, but there never has been. We're very close to the fisheries and wildlife people in management of all our forest, which we're jointly doing. And I don't see any major problem with not having a specific minister. We have a minister who we report to. We don't have the same policies that we had 40 years ago. We try and be fluctuate and be flexible. It sometimes takes longer than we would like and longer than the contractors would like to change some of these policies, but we are changing them.
What about contractors having to leave Saskatchewan in order to find employment?
I don't really know what the economics are of any particular person, but I know that Saskatchewan harvesting operations are good, efficient people, and sometimes they do go and harvest in other provinces, and this has been traditional, as I understand it.
The Provincial Department of Forestry does not recognize the needs of the small operator, and they've slanted all their policies for the bigger operations, and they've forgotten about the little guy.
So you guys are getting squeezed out?
Well, we're being squeezed out because the department officials have had a forest policy in place for the last 30 years, and for them to change the policy at all would be an admission that they've been wrong. So as a result, they're just dragging their feet and there's nothing happening.
So what are you going to do, Bob?
Well, I'm moving part of my operation into Alberta. I've got to go where there's work.
And do you think that's probably what most of the smaller contractors are going to have to do? Is move out of Saskatchewan?
Well, they either have to move out or go bankrupt. It's small business is supposed to be our backbone, but the government hasn't got the feelings for small business.
You did a lot of work here. You've been here for a lot of years.
I've been in business for 20 years. I started off in the fence post business, and I got into the pulp operation, and I've been here for 20 years. We've employed up to 125 people. We're down to about 40 people in Saskatchewan now, and in the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll be down to probably 15.
Do you think that this all came about since the Conservative government came in and the policies with the bigger operations?
Not necessarily. The thing is that it seems that the Conservative government is carrying on the policy of the previous government. They promised change when they got here. They haven't. They're totally sticking with the policies that have been in place since 1944. So we've got a forest policy made in 1944, and we're still operating in the 1980s with it. We need a new forest policy. We have a forestry minister that doesn't show up in Prince Albert. Forestry, the forestry resource isn't recognized by the government. The department is called the Department of Parks, Recreation and Culture. There's no mention of forestry. We need a minister of forestry because this is an industry. We're told always that there's a shortage of wood. There's a shortage of wood. The inventory figures that the department uses are old inventory figures. Since Weyerhaeuser's been here, they've done their own inventory, and they're discovering that there's probably 35% more wood in Saskatchewan than what the department figures ever showed. So the thing is that the wood has to be used somehow. Weyerhaeuser will probably expand their operations because there's a need to use the wood. The wood is becoming over-mature, it's decaying. We're having big fires, it's burning up, and there's no return to the province. So we're always told there's a shortage of wood. In fact, that's not true. I'd like to see the Premier of the province and the Minister of Forestry come into Prince Albert and bring his department officials with him and sit down with some of the people that are in the industry. And I think if we sat down for 2 or 3 days and had a very frank discussion, I think that most of the problems for all the small operators could be solved using some common sense and not using the department.